When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ledlow, and enjoy today's episode.
Yeah, so I see it exploding beyond resources that are available to even work it for as far as labor goes. I think I see a big drawdown in that. I'm like, okay, how is the growth of Texas going to be able? There's not enough agents out there to work. That's the biggest thing I hear in Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth. There's not enough labor agents like they have in California market. Totally different opposite. You have thousands and thousands of agents that, there's a certain standard, certain expectation, certain look. But here in Dallas, Austin, that whole area, it's just lacking in really qualified folks that have the right certification to be able and legally able to function in those job needs in Texas. So I see it outgrowing the needs fast.
And I think the need there is much broader than, and I don't know other states or anything like that, but I think the need is, as I've learned, I mean, it's EP at and event security at a small cowboy church that's bringing in 500 people at a cowboy church, all the way to the unique things going up to concerts, large concerts, things like that. So just the variety of needs out there, I think, is significant. So guess what? Your uniform becomes everything from a cowboy outfit to fit in to the tuxedo. And so how do you fit in with all those cultures? So just as simple as what uniform that we wear, what clothing that we wear, I think it's very complex based on that complexity and size and scale. And so now, how many people do you have to be able to, how do you source all of those things at the scale of some of these events and things like that? So, scale, Texas is big. And so I think so many of the areas increases the complexity of drivers.
That's a good point.
I can't get drivers. And now add on the bleeding edge stuff like, I can't get drone threat people.
Interesting.
So
that's a new request.
So it is again scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the problem, I think, in Texas.
Like you said, it's scaling and the need for labor to make up for the loss of qualified people that have the credentials to do the work. I think there's going to be a big shortage probably. And I think that's why everybody's starting to move out there.
Yeah, it's not just a guard card, as we all know. If we were just starting with guard cards, good program. It's not insignificant, but the sustainment of needs and things like that. There is. If we look across all the things that we need, basic training, sustainment, etc. There's a whole. There's just not a lot of driving organizations and training organizations. I talk to a lot of trainers here locally that are licensed to be trainers, and they're going, "We're overwhelmed. I can't have enough classes."
Really?
And of course, facilities and things like that. So, it's a scale issue across the entire spectrum of hiring to sustainment.
Okay, that's good to know. I thought that might be a problem, but I wasn't sure. But now, it makes more sense. Now, where is your expert of genius is actually writing? That's what you're really good at, and you also like to teach and train. That's another thing you love to do. Now, what areas do you love? What is your areas of expertise that you like to train in this space? Is it technology, or is it just certification, or what? Can you describe to the audience what you like to train in?
Yeah. So obviously the pain points that I do as a company, but I think in the executive protection side, governance, how to connect with the business, confidentiality, export control, kind of that stuff before the field. Now, obviously out in the field, understanding culture. I've been in 15 countries and in a corporate security side, not a military side. I was not in the military. And so I understand business culture and overseas. So when you have principals or their family, there are varying cultures. So that, I don't like to call it soft skills, but that non-tactical stuff. And so how do you deal with those things that are, up through the advanced? Now, again, if I need to go out in the field, let's go. I'll be glad to be second chair to those things and things like that. But how do we use technology in an advance? So I'll give away one of my secrets. My favorite little app in an advance is an app that when I go to take a picture in my advance, in the upper left-hand corner, it overlays the GPS coordinates of that picture. Boom. Okay, so now I come back and be like, where'd you take that picture? The GPS coordinates are right up there. Now, that's not high tech or anything like that, but just the fact that it's laying on the picture. So, just telling some of the great folks that are great at tactical side and saying, let's think about these other areas. I do a family go bag class that I take from a combination of my EP work and my first responder work. I merge those two together. And I build a family go bag class for local families, Rotary clubs, things like that. Again, some people just don't even know in the EP world, how do we manage gear? How do we train with gear? How fast can you find your tourniquet in that backpack?
Good one.
So those, obviously could be the actor on the other type of training, but those kind of things that connect why we're signed up to do this thing called executive protection, event security, from the why you signed on to the things you got to know about and understand the why of what you're doing. And so love those areas to augment other training because I think, like with my article I wrote on this stuff, there's so much training where we need to do before we put them in a tactical world, because we may find that they're not able to handle that soft world. And they may not be able to handle the field level soft world.
Yeah.
But guess what? They're great at field level being in the office. They may be greater than Mark and Jim McConnell might be sitting in a GSOC doing intel, maybe much better than you and I.
Sure.
And so let's figure out how do they handle, the example that I always use is how many times have we been at the hotel bar after a long day of EP and everybody's sitting there gabbing about what the day was like. Really? I thought we had a confidentiality requirement.
Yeah.
So,
right.
So yeah, Mark, I think it's augmenting other great training that is out there with that softer business legal kind of stuff that we probably should be doing before we get them out on a range.
Hey, here's something I need to ask you about, Jim. John Schumann and I have had this discussion a lot. He's a former Secret Service guy. And from a corporate standpoint, if you're scrubbing resumes, and like I talked to Zach over at Falcon Hill, and he said, he had told me to make this public knowledge that if we saw any guns on social media or rifles or whatever, they're off the list. Now, being a corporate guy from your Fortune 25 company that you each work for, would they, I know everybody's into tactical, it's fun. I get it. It's fun, shooting some stuff. Let's spend a day at the range, just have a blast, blow some stuff up. I get it. I'm a Marine. I like that stuff too. However, to make an impression on a client like you're the hiring manager. If you're scrubbing these resumes and you go to their social media and you start seeing tactical, you see these Delta Force looking folks and they're trying to be, they're just having fun. Is that a turnoff at today's corporate marketplace trying to hire a qualified candidate? What is your thoughts and your background and your passion in the corporate days?
Yeah. So when I probably at least 4 times a month get to mentor military and law enforcement that are transitioning. So I have a class that I do that with. Love doing that class for those folks. They're my heroes. My wife is former law enforcement, so my heroes, and I take care of them. So I think with that is people need to understand what background checks and due diligence means, because we might not have been taught that in resume class 101 or transition class 101. So let me explain it to how I explain it to others.
Okay.
One is background checks is I'm going to do the background check on the person. Due diligence generally is the due diligence on the company. So if I'm going to hire Mark's company, I'm going to do a background check, not just on the company, but his principals, i.e. Mark and his CFO and his CTO and all those things. So I'm going to do that due diligence. When you get into now you're hiring an EP, event management, post protection person, you're kind of a company walking up. You're an individual company. So guess what? I'm looking at both of those. And how do you represent? Because if you're a 1099, you're also known in the corporate world as a vendor. You're a supplier. You're a vendor.
Right.
You're a part of this thing called the supply chain. Okay. But I'm an individual. No, you're not. If you're 1099 and folks, you're a vendor. You're a supplier. So with that pulls into what am I going to learn about you? So my resume, your resume gets about 30 seconds of visibility.
30
your LinkedIn
seconds.
profile gets 30 to 45 seconds. Your resume gets a look at.
Wow.
Your LinkedIn profile gets 2 to 3 minutes.
Whoa. I didn't know that.
Okay. So now let's add those two together. Are those in sync, out of sync? How are those working out? Now I'm going to take that, and if you've kind of passed that basic thing, and by the way, this is after all the HR automated stuff. Now it's got to a hiring person. That's how much time I'm going to spend on those two areas. Now, based on what I see, I'm going to say, one is, what else can I learn about this individual? And guess what? Google is my friend. Google Images is my friend. All the other social medias. And if you think that social media is Facebook, Instagram, etc., go out and look at, there's a lot of charts out there around what is a social media platform. There's hundreds of them. Okay. You think you're going to hide behind Discord? You think you're going to hide behind other things that put this stuff out and searchable? Probably not. So obviously based on the role, if you're just doing, scheduling for my EP program, you know what? It's a less of a risk than the other things, but you're still going to have access to confidential information. So I'm not just looking for, now I'm looking for how confidential are you on these platforms? How I've seen resumes that have had confidential information in them, LinkedIn profiles that have confidential information in them. Red flag, or at least an orange flag. So I'm looking at a lot of different things besides, and of course, I always tell people, tell me what you have done, not what you know, because I'll be able to know what you know. So there's a fine balance around that. And what are resumes and LinkedIn's for? Resumes for, and ultimately the comparison. They're to get you in the door. They're not to tell your entire story. Tell your entire story at the interview, or tell better your story at the interview. Don't try to, because that's just the thing to find the right door to get connected in. If you're networking that Mark and I have done, it's about finding out how do I get to turn that handle. Now, when Mark and I get behind closed doors, we're going to have a more open and transparent conversation. But people are looking at that stuff, and so do this. Let's take a principle that you think you would be covering by. You're going to go apply at ABC Corporation. Go take their CEO. I just thought of this. Go take a picture of their CEO and put it up against your pictures that you have all over the internet, and be them for a second. And say, if I was that person on the right-hand side, would I like to see and be involved in a person that I see on the left-hand side? Whether that's guns or partying or whatever that looks like. So, there's a place for private social media. It's a vent. It's a place to do that. But Due diligence and background checks is more than just checking your school records and that stuff in the old days. Good background checks and things like that. Now, when you get to the hiring manager, I'm going to spend potentially hours.
Like you said, there's software that scrubs social media.
Sure. I'm going to automate that. Absolutely.
And then you're going to automate that. And if you're on a corporate job, a full FTE, full-time employment with a corporation, and they have, let's say they have an anti-gun policy. And then you want that job so bad, it's $150,000 a year, but someone goes on your Facebook and you have some very anti-policy things in your Facebook or your social media, you might want to go back and scrub your stuff out. Well, that's who I am. Well, if you want to work, you want to work. You got to figure out who you are and what you're trying to do. Like, I see that a mistake by a lot of the young people out there.
Yeah.
Everybody, I use my Facebook for my, my podcast and for our business. And that's about it. And once in a while, a client wants to take a picture. Our team's been on YouTube or something like that. But those things you can't help.
Yeah. But I don't doubt, by the way, there are companies that you want to go apply for that are okay with that. They're
absolutely.
I don't know. They're high threat Yemen's ship kind of protection.
Yeah.
There's probably some value there, but again, in kind of the Fortune 500 level,
that's how it is.
It is. It's image.
Brand reputation.
Go look at. Yeah, reputation. So go and if you're going to go apply for a Fortune 500, go to their website and see if they have a code of conduct. Many of them publicly publish their code of conduct on the internet. Go read it. Are you? Could you potentially be violating it the minute you go to the interview?
Oh, really good point. Never thought about that.
Go read their policies.
Yeah, for the listener, this is these are golden nuggets that Jim's telling you right now. If you're trying to break into the industry, you should be taking notes on all this content that Jim just shared. It's true, and we're trying to give you a very tip of the spear approach in finding a job, and Jim just gave you a lot of great, valuable tips on how to become that candidate.
And folks, I'm not perfect. If Mark and I want to do a job together, I absolutely expect Mark as the prime to do a full background check and due diligence on me. And it's not a perfect world out there, and vice versa. As do I want to work with that client? Or do I want to work with that client? Meaning Mark as my client as an individual. So there's a two-way, and that builds trust. That builds relationships, it builds trust, it establishes integrity. And so I fully expect Mark to do that due diligence on me, even though there's certain things that's going to be, he may not need to do because of the trust we've built. But I want him to do that. We should expect that of our clients and customers.
Yeah, that's standard protocol. Like when I become a vendor, like when the process, it become like we're a vendor for, first of all, the bank, public knowledge. A lot of people know that. And it took us 3 months. They vetted me. They went through my history, make sure I was licensed in Oregon, had an executive manager license, which allowed me to have contracts, general liability insurance. I'm sure they scrubbed me, my background. I'm sure it's federally regulated. So guess what? I went through the ringer to be approved.
Yep.
And so you can't take shortcuts with big firms like that. And it just takes time to earn that credibility and that respect. You just got to earn it, and you got to be above board to get those contracts. Yep. I'm starting my own company. I'm going to become a vendor for B of A. Well, B of A, I'm sure, has very strict FDIC guidelines. You're talking about the federal government, so you have to be in compliance. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Jim. It's a different world being in a vendor relationship with major players, a billion-dollar company, because they have, like you said, brand reputation, brand protection they have to do.
Yeah, I think that compliance, we talked about it before, the next couple of years, the word compliance to contracts and the toughness of security requirements are going to be in the contracts with folks like us is going to grow. And imagine the auditors showing up to your office, Mark, or my office and saying, hey, I'm from customer ABC. We're doing our supply chain compliance audit of you, and not just the regulators. The regulators obviously can, but now when customers start to show up, and they're not going to show up with a finance auditor. They're going to show up with people like Mark and Jim that know what to look for and how to audit it. It's going to be the differentiator, and the big boys and the small ones are going to be subject to it. And I think it's going to hit us in the next couple of years. I mean, certain companies that have been found on a regulatory basis, imagine they start to lose contracts because they're non-compliant to regulatory and or code of conduct or that contract. I think it's coming, absolutely coming down the pipe.
Do you think more so in the more grow like Texas is going to probably be doing that more so just to over everybody?
Everywhere in the country. Yeah, I think corporations, particularly corporations that cross state borders, cross international borders. Hey, executive protection folks, close protection folks. Y'all ever heard of GDPR?
What's that?
And if you haven't heard of GDPR, which is the UK's version of their privacy laws, you don't think that relates to you? Try again. I mean, Max Siegel talked about it at the IPSB. So what privacy laws do we have? Well, if our principal is a UK citizen and happened to be in the United States, you don't think that UK laws apply? Or UK citizen. So CCPA, which is the California version of SET. These are going to start, if they're not already, by the way, in your contracts. Guess what? Now we have a new role under our programs called a compliance officer. That's not Mark. It's not Jim as the manager.
Right.
It's a person that knows how to deal with compliance and knows how to push people like Mark and Jim to say, Mark, Jim, we found a compliance issue. We found it internally before a customer found it. I think it is absolutely around the corner. That audits of our contracts is around the corner, and contracts will be lost, big and small.
Wow. That was a multi-million-dollar bomb drop on the podcast coming from Jim. I think he's right. That's a good theory. I think that's a good forecast. As we get closer and closer to the United Nations and how things are shaking up right now, and corporate has to protect their business interest. And it makes sense if we're doing more business with the European nations.
Yeah, it's no longer going to be show me your guard card, show me your insurance. It's going to be show me your confidentiality training, show me your export control training, show me your code of conduct training. And I've had the honor to audit and do security reviews. Not risk assessments, but actually security reviews of compliance to lots and lots of suppliers in the supply chain world. My next book is on supply chain security. And have we done that much in the EP or even the guard world, going down to the guard level all the way up to EP level? It's not happened very much, and I know it. It's absolutely coming. It's absolutely coming, and you don't have to worry about what you say until a great auditor shows up. And when a great auditor shows up and starts asking great questions, all the policies in the world is not going to help you when we say, show me your training. Show me your sign-offs. Show me state kind of thing. So
that's B33.5 or whatever that is for California just passed. Crackdown. I think you're right.
Yeah, pick the law, pick the regulation. That's just the starting point of an audit. If I'm going to really make some dent into you, it's going to be the contract.
Good to know. The contracts don't have teeth in it.
Yeah, that's the only reason they write them, because enforceability. It's enforceability. So what's the impact to you as a provider if you lose a contract on noncompliance? You may be a great agent.
Yeah.
The principals may love you.
Right. Wow. I'm just processing what you just explained. It's just what 1 to 1 millionth times a millionth quadruple. I'm thinking geometry and calculus in my head now. It's just, but it's true. I would agree with you. With California just passing the SB Senate bill legislation for workplace violence compliance, so yeah, it makes total sense now.
Yeah, and I've seen it in. I've probably reviewed 1,000 contracts with suppliers of varying roles, and so there's an easy one in there: compliance with all laws. Well, go back to my statement before from my pastor. All in every language means all. Well, Mark, you and I are never going to know all the laws that we need to be compliant with, but we know the ones that we probably should.
Right.
And SB for California, what's its equivalent around the country, and then. You know what? Guess what? There's going to be some things in there around. It could be something as how often they may have a bullet into the contract of how often you test your AEDs. And Jim McConnell, the author, walks in and says, "Hey, Mark, show me your AED log of all the testing that you've done." And I see one entry from June of last year. Now, will that kill the contract? No, but it puts you on notice.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah.
Would a client fire me just for not having, my stuff, my AED not tested? No, but they're gonna, there's an old saying that if the fold down table on an airplane is dirty, do you ever question the airplane maintenance?
Oh,
because they didn't take care of the simple stuff. Now in today's day and age, some of the whatever. But if you're not focused on the little things, what else are you missing in non-compliance of that contract?
Yeah. What is the auditor always looking for? They're always looking for holes, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously auditors that are looking for some proverbial quota of findings. But to me, if I'm going to audit an EP program, I'm going to start with regulatory, obviously. I'm going to look at then the contract. I'm going to look at billing. I'm going to look at training. I'm going to look at sustainment. I'm going to not just what is required in the contract, but what is over and above.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at information security. You as the supplier have my information, my contact information. How are you securing that? Are you encrypting all of the advanced documents properly? Mm-hmm. Or are you just putting them out on a Google Drive that have got 150 people that have access to that Google Drive?
Right. Wow.
So I'm going to look at, if you're doing things like tracking, who has access to that tracking data? Is it everybody on your team just because it's easier? Or but if there's only 3 people on, my 200 person team, I got 200 employees and I've only got 3 people that are covering this particular client. Why do the other 197 need access to the tracking data for this client? It's called principal least privilege, old school stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to cover a lot of different areas as an auditor. I'm not just going to cover how well you shoot, because that may not be completely relevant at all. So I'm going to cover all of those different areas. I'm going to cover the physical security of where you have all of my data. Got it in that. Do you get all that? Do you put all that data in some, shared space at one of these co-working spaces? Is that the best idea?
Right.
What if I go do a physical security assessment of that co-working space and I find my confidential information physically unsecured? It's going to be a bad day. So as an auditor, I'm going to look across the board, across the spectrum. Yeah, I'm going to look at finances, look at timesheets, hotel bills.
Receipts. You gotta have receipts. Wherever you go, whenever I travel, I have an envelope and I stuff all my receipts in that envelope just for records.
Sure.
I have it.
Sure.
So were you here? Yeah, there it is. Date, time, the amount.
Yeah.
Okay. They'll leave you alone. If you don't have your receipts, then the IRS makes your life a little bit difficult.
Yeah. because I'm auditing to protect my brand. I'm auditing to protect my principles. I'm auditing to protect my reputation. There's way too many cameras out there in the field to not realize that I need to be prepared to protect against all those cameras.
Absolutely. So, Jim, do you have any parting words for the audience? Any words of advice? Any encouraging words? Any words of inspiration? What are you excited about for 2024?
Yeah. Let's, hey, as an industry, let's up our integrity. Let's up our passion for what we do. Let's take care of our people. Let's take care of. Let's learn to be servants. There's a whole funny argument in every class about the carrying the bags kind of thing that goes on every now and then. And so let's figure out how to become servants in the right balance to that. Absolute integrity. When we get behind the building and we're just need to vent, find the right places to vent, and let's find how do we protect the ability to vent when we're working 60 hours a week. There's absolutely a place that helps our mental health, helps all of those things. But there is a certain place and time for that. When we're in that mode, let's protect the principal and our clients properly. And protection. Let's learn. If you have not defined in your organization what protection means, stop. Figure out what that means. Be ready for audits. Don't let them scare you. Audit yourself. And so you're ready. And I think it's going to be our visibility of protection is getting more and more. Gosh, 20 years ago, how often were we on Fox News? Now, I mean, everybody's trying to spot the EP agent inside of a crowd.
Yeah.
And
it's
so,
crazy.
I mean, we are more on the news, positive and negative, than we ever have been. And so let's up the integrity. Let's up the quality. Let's up those things. And they'll be differentiated. There will be people that will fall off, and there will be people that will succeed.
Well said. Hey, Jim, where can people find you? You got a website where can they find your book and your social media stuff?
Thanks. Simple askmcconnell.com is the website. As boring as that is, heavy on LinkedIn. Follow me there. That's where all of my content goes there. My book is called Converge Security Metrics. There is and you can get that on Amazon. Mark, for a guest of your show and the honor to be here, if your audience will send me a connection, an email through my website or through LinkedIn, I will send them a free copy of my executive protection chapter
nice.
For you. So I'll pull that out of the book.
Okay.
This doesn't mean that I don't want you to buy the book because it has a lot of other things. But for the EP team, I'll pull that chapter out into a PDF and send it to your audience if they'll send me an email, just as a small token of being able to help this industry.
Well, thank you.
All I ask is people implement it.
And what we'll do, Jim, is we'll have my team put that email in the notes of the podcast so they can find that. And the podcast focuses on all of the podcast platforms. So please give us a 5-star rating on that. Help us with the algorithms and all that. But my team will put that email for Jim on the in the notes of the podcast. And then that way, Jim will get those emails directly. Yep. And then we'll also put the link to his website and the book and Amazon, all that stuff too.
Great.
And
Mark, it's an honor to be here with you, man. And let's do this again on another topic as you deem fit. And as always, we'll continue to work together on different things. And I truly appreciate the friendship, professional and personal friendship that we have. I've learned a lot from you, and thank you for the honor to be here and to be able to hopefully give back to your audience.
Absolutely, Jim. And I know the audience is going to love this conversation. Is a little bit different from a lot we had in the past. So I think it's going to spice it up a little bit. And we're going to probably get a lot of feedback on LinkedIn once we post it. And the listeners, if you do me a favor, subscribe on YouTube and make a comment on YouTube and give us a thumbs up, make that bell go up. It helps with the algorithms as well. And we are a self-funded podcast. That means we have no sponsors. And I did that deliberately so we can have freedom of speech, freedom of talk, expression, opinion. And that way advertisers just get control of our thoughts and opinions, right? I don't want to be a network news TV program or like that. So this is self-funded, the labor of love for an industry that's given both Jim and I so much. And it's just our way of giving back to the industry and trying to make it a better, more peaceful, so we all get along and lift each other up. And thanks for supporting the show, folks. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, thanks. There's enough work out there for us, guys, girls, and let's all work together to better it for our why, which our why is for our principals and our organizations that we get to support. We are blessed to be able to support them. Let's not forget that, and let's serve them well.
It's all about serving the industry, folks. Fervent heart. With that said, we'll wrap up the podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Fearless Mindset. And I'll also do a little drop. We're going to start doing the Fearless Mindset retreats coming up. I'm behind the scenes planning a talk with former head of physical security Brian Zhang at First Public Bank. We're going to probably do a fireside chat on how that all went down with the Change Takeover. That'll probably be happening in Sacramento, and we'll probably do some other stuff throughout the country. We're just trying to figure out what works. And so keep in tune with that on YouTube, and the social media will be releasing that information. Till next time, folks, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting the show. And thanks, Jim, for your time. And that's a wrap for now. We'll see you on the next one.